bad form, especially on video, to drop all your stuff on the ground. Hey tubers, welcome back for another adventure. You're looking at another 1986 TRX200SX, and this is stone cold seized and trying to fall on me and damage me. So this thing is just rock solid seized, and it has the problem a lot of these do. You see the red death down there and all. So this was a chain chucker, and it damaged the case, and they don't have the case guard on, so it really did damage the case. Now the story on this is Don Johnson bought it complete. It even had nice Mayer's plastics on it and all that. He bought it complete as a seized unit, and he sold some parts off of it, and this is the carcass that's left. So just quickly, from my point of view, the rear end has a little, it doesn't seem to be seized. That chain is all bound up down there. So I'm hoping the rear end is good. If the rear end is good, I have that one in the pull shed. We can smash that right on. So the rear end is good. The whole back of it is tight. It looks like it's got all the bolts on. So once again, I need that. Recoils, always nice to get. Starters, always nice to get, though there's no guarantee this starter is any good. I'm noticing these bolts are loose. I don't know if somebody tried to take the engine off. That bolt is loose. This is here, right? The intake manifold. If anybody's had to buy one of those recently, you know that they're expensive and not all that easy to get. Foot pegs on this side, but not that side. You know, guys know I need this plastic cover. We'll have to get that off and see what's cooking in there. The front end's on there, but somebody tagged the front drums, obviously tires. Shocks don't look half bad. It's not all that easy to check the shocks if you don't have some tires on there. The geometries aren't right. This is part of the dashboard, right? Let's get it the right side up. So, you know, wiring, the CDI is there, the coil, obviously the pulse generators in the engine. It's got some pieces, right? I don't see the I don't see the starter relay. So anyway, so it had some stuff taken off of it, but you know, it's kind of like, what do we have? Before I go too far with it, I do want to see if the motor is seized as in I'm dead now, or seized as in maybe it'll come back to life. And if it does start, does it smoke? Does it sound bad? Does it have, you know, banging in the lower end? Does it have clacky valves? So I always like to get an idea of what's going on with the engine before I shelve it or store it or whatever. So we're going to start out with that. And first thing we're going to do is try to get it loose. So we're going to get this cover off and get the spark plug out. Get some oil in here. Just... I mean, it's not, that's not seized up. So anyway, I think it's enough parts to make it worthwhile. So I'm happy. Hopefully he's happy with that rear end he got from me from sitting in the driveway. It did get some water into it, so hopefully he drains it out and his bearings are good. It was still able to turn. So once again, hopefully he could, I personally would fill it with oil and get it out there and see what it sounds like. Dump the oil a whole bunch of times before I took it apart. But once again, it's his now, and it's his to decide. Let's see what we could do here. So this engine is seized, and I don't know if it's lightly seized or completely seized. It seems to have oil in it. I can get back in, or I'm going to have the back of my truck covered in oil. So it seems to have oil in it, though it might have water on the bottom of that oil. I can't turn it over to mix it up and turn it into a milkshake. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. But having a little oil in there is a better sign than not having any oil. So let's see if this thing is lightly seized or horrible seized. I like to get into the engine quick and see what's going on to, well, not into, but get it oiled up, see what's going on. The spark plug is tight, was tight. It doesn't look rusty in there. I'm hoping for the best, right? Give it a little blaster. So while I'm getting the starter cover off, that'll hopefully let things loosen up. He seemed to think this thing was just weather seized, and that lightly weather seized, and that I'd be able to get it running again. So I'm hoping for the best. So this is a 3 out of 4 bolt recoil starter. The only reason why I mention it is when you don't put the bottom bolt in, a lot of times you leak more oil. So guys, try to get that extra bolt in. So I'm going to set up the camera. You guys could watch me work a little bit. Once again, I started putting these bolts just back into a little bit to not have to be fishing around for them all the time. This recoil, if it's hard seized, this recoil be going right back on. Anyway, this is the crank. And, well, I don't know if you heard that. I seem to be getting something out of it. The valves don't sound good. Maybe a jump time. I don't know. Let's try to turn the crank bolt. See what we get out of it. It's a 12. This is turning it the right way, which just broke the bolt loose. Let's turn it the wrong way. Turning it against the starter. No, she might have jumped time. I might be banging up the valves. So it's time for a timing check. Let's see what that looks like. I gotta get a few pieces off. I gotta get this cover off. Right, that's normally a little bit of a bear. I gotta pull the skull cap. Right, the side cover, the skull cap. Hopefully I could tell with the skull cap off what the valves are doing. Then you run it up to top dead center and see what we have. So I put a little piece of cable in the spark plug hole. I think you guys could see it there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the engine over. And if basically it seems to lock up when the piston is all the way up, that would indicate that it's probably jump time. Okay, it's coming up. Right. it's got oil in it. Yeah, it keeps going a little sideways on me. So somebody must have known this was okay. It's at top dead center, and it's kind of locked up. So she probably jumped time, and I'm trying not to tear it all apart at the moment. So I'm going with jump time, and obviously that's not the best news in the world. It has oil in there already. Probably there's a good possibility that the head is junk. Maybe not. If it was out racing about when it jumped time, normally it completely smashes the valves and the engine just turns over like freewheel. All right, I'm gonna look over what other parts I'm gonna get out of this, and then this is drifting closer and closer to just being parts. I'm going with this thing jump time, or not necessarily jump time, given that the bolts are loose. He kind of bought it as an unknown. I'm beginning to think perhaps somebody took it apart and put it together wrong, and then as they were turning it, they ran into the clang and the bang. Cylinder heads are not out there as in the Chinese knockoff out there, but they are out there from a people tearing them apart point of view. So especially given that they end up with a lot of case problems, sometimes you could get the top end. So if I want to bring this engine to get back to life again, I probably can. Tearing it apart to show you the carnage, I don't think there's big carnage in there. I think the piston is barely hitting the valve. So let's stop with the engine there. So given that we're putting the engine aside for the time being, what else do we have? You guys know I've mentioned it, I need this rear end, and it appears to be in decent shape, right? The hubs, the wheels, right? The chain, the sprocket. I mean, all that looks nice. So it's obviously not seized. It's got the brakes on here, right? Swing arm's still tight. So the rear end has to come off to go into the pool shed motor. The other thing is we discovered, once again, there's no cheap China knockoff on the starter, so we're going to pull the gears out of that and see if the starter's still with us. If it's not, I'll probably order a brush set for it. You guys will get to see the brush set rebuild video when I do that. As a matter of fact, I got another one I need to do that with. By the way, if you put the plug back in for storage, make sure you tighten it. I always discover this stuff the hard way. If you leave them out and snow gets in this area, as it melts, it seems to follow the threads right in. The water follows the threads in, and it messes your motors up. So better not to leave them out at all. Better to cover them really well. But should all those things fail you, make sure you tighten the plug enough. Also, you'd be amazed how much water could follow the intake and the exhaust in. I should also check the exhaust, see what the bolts feel like. Got one. We'll put the camera over there. So for the exhaust, things aren't cracked. Those threads look like okay. That one's broken off. But nobody's done anything bad to it yet, so who knows? Maybe it'll come loose. I'm happy. I got some good parts here. I want to get in there to look at those starter gears. You guys are familiar with these, right? One of my subscribers recommended that I get mine out and use it regularly, and now that I am, it's like, you know, just put pressure on and give it a turn. I already sometimes if the bolts are a little bit worn at the Phillips there, it works better if you keep tapping it as you're turning. Okay, 2 bolts are out. Take the cover off carefully. Right, it's bad form, especially on video, to drop all your stuff on the ground. Okay, here's the starter gear. I think you guys could see that. It looks to be in nice shape. And this is the one-way clutch. Seems to feel okay. The starter. The starter, she don't turn so good. We'll put a battery to it, but I think the starter needs some love and attention. We got the jump pack hooked up, and the answer is seems to always start, but boy, it's a little bit of a stiff guy. Anyway, so looks like I got a starter out of this also. Rear end, starter, recoil. Parts are adding up. Little plastic cover over here, right? A million nuts and bolts. I gotta tell you, this thing I think is working out for me. By the way, to put this back together again, I found that it's easiest to put this in first and make sure it settles all the way in. Then you put the centerpiece in. You gotta shake it a tad, and then remember, ears down, and you slide that on. Right. If you don't do it that way, it fights you on the way back together again. I don't think I have anything else to really go through here. I know what parts I got, and I'm happy with that. When you see this engine again, there's a few engines that I'm kind of putting aside for winter projects. I'm hoping to get a little space in the basement, and then, you know, I'll put this on a baker's tray, prop it up, maybe even make a stand for it. Then down in the basement where things are clean and a little better controlled, it's easier to open them up and do some work on them, right? Hanging off the back tailgate of my truck is really not the best way to be working on this. What parts am I going to borrow? Immediately nothing. I might get that rear end off of there just to make it a little lighter to move around and a little less troublesome, easier to store too. That I'm probably going to do before I get it off the back of the truck. But other than that, I'm really not going to strip it down. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it all back together again. To get the rear end out, it's this long bolt and the shock and the cables, and I think it just drops. I don't think you guys need to go through the trouble of seeing that. All right, parts. Right now, this is parts, a lot of good parts. This bike will not be put back together again. It just needs too much. Front 4 tires, front hubs, and wheels. I mean, back wheels also, obviously. The engine has either been put together wrong or it's jump time, right? So the engine has to come off. It's, considering the other stuff I got going on, this needs too much love and attention to put this as a whole bike back together again. So I truly got my parts machine, and that's what I was after. Anyway, in the meantime, I really want to thank you guys for dropping by to watch and comment. I always look forward to the comments. Some of them just crack me up. So please keep the comments coming. If anybody wants to do a little trade deal, you know, let me know what you got and what you want to trade. And by the way, I am not going to trade my TRX300 4x4 for a broke down China 110. Typically parts are a little more interesting. I don't mind trading parts because used parts are used parts in both directions. I get a little more nervous when it comes to selling parts because I send you parts, they're good, they're no good. It takes me forever to mail them. People get mad at me because I don't mail them. You know, mailing isn't going to work. It's better if you're within striking distance and I could get to you and we could trade. Once again, please remember, feet down, heads up, and get out and enjoy each and every day. Bye now.